have the huge pleasure to invite to the stage currently representative of CD Projekt Red, Michał Madej. Please join me welcoming him on stage.
Thank you very much.
We will have a question and answer session after the talk. I don't know if Michał, do you mind questions during the talk, or we are waiting for
no, sorry for that, because I thought I have 1 hour, so my presentation is like super long. I will try to rush through it, but hopefully we'll have time for questions and answers. If not, I will be waiting outside so you can ask me questions.
Okay, awesome.
So welcome everybody, and I will talk today about dark side of game design, which will be a little bit about manipulation in games. Already the title is already a manipulation. It was a little bit like a bait click. I will actually try. So yes, I am working at CD Projekt Red. I work on The Witcher 1. Right now I'm Cyberpunk, and I also had experience in Techland and Ubisoft. Okay, so this is the main thing we would like to have in the games. We would like to have people that are motivated, curious, brave, and as well they do what we want. However, this is actually what gamers are. So they are later in the game, they show their like min-maxing game, they are finding exploits, they're actually pretty stubborn, and the worst case, they know game better than us. So we are thinking about ourselves as game designers, that we are this kind of wise guys who show the experience and people follow it and are super happy. But actually, we need to embrace also our dark side. And on the previous presentation, there was like, don't lie, and I'm telling you, we actually do lie. And there will be later about it in the presentation and right now. So game design has a strong influence on the weak-minded. I mean, like weak-minded in general, all the players. And what we learn most of the time is the rational game design. And the thing is that people are irrational. So what we need to do is to sometimes forget about the logic and think about actually emotions and how we can use psychology and some kind of exploits of our mind for good. So before we go for this very interesting topic, I will be focusing a little bit more boring stuff. However, before you start using those very powerful tools and tricks of the dark side, you have to understand what is our goal, what is good design, so you won't abuse them. And second thing is, you have to understand how players' motivation and mind works. So the first thing is, what is the game? So if you try to Google definition of a video game or the game in general, you will find so many different definitions, and it brings me this, story that is very, very popular, especially in the East, about like blind men trying to describe an elephant. So everyone was saying, okay, I know elephant is like a snake, it's like a tree, because they were touching different parts of the animal. And I actually use a very, very, very simple definition of what is a game. It's simply entertainment, interactive entertainment software, and it has a purpose, it has a function, so it has a function to entertain people, and basically what we design is an utility object. So design is something, the game design, from my point of view, how I approach the game design is basically almost the same like designing anything else that we use. And now I will jump into general definition of design. So designing video games is no different than designing a spoon. Once we know what is game design, we will ask the question, what does it mean to have good or bad design? So let's go to the spoon. So I Googled design spoon. I think I had to turn off the filters to actually have only spoons on the screen. And the results here, what you see is so many different spoons. And I was like, come on, it's one of the most probably simple, it's one of the simplest tools that we invented, and still, if you think about design, there's so many different designs, and especially this one was captured my attention, like because this is anti-spoon. It's like a spoon with a hole. Why would you like to design a spoon with a hole in the middle? It's completely against spooniness. I don't know how to even define it. So. And I just started to follow it, and I realized that this spoon was designed to actually eat meatballs, because then the excess sauce can soak through the hole, and still you get your meatball with enough sauce around. So it's not bad design; it's just different function. This is another example. Is it a bad design? No, it's actually excellent design. It's just purpose is evil. Because this bench was designed in a way that people can't sleep on it. I don't know if you ever spent some night on the airport and they have this kind of benches and you have to try to, like 8 hours waiting for a plane and you can't sleep on it. So design actually is perfect, as I said. So it's good. You can say it's evil. So the thing is that when we think about design, the first thing we think about it is the goal, because this actually defines if what we design later is good or bad. So we have to think about how we control player behavior through the item. So this is actually, in my opinion, this is my definition of design. We create a thing, and this thing manipulates user in order to achieve what we wanted. So if we design a bench in those, like if you've seen, it actually forces people to sit on it. I don't know, you probably have seen those like bus stops. You have those very weird benches that you cannot sleep on them as well. You can just like stand and lie on the corner. So this is exactly what I call the design. This forces this manipulates players to act as we want. Some examples. So for example, this is an example of level design or architecture. Stairs, one of the simplest things you can imagine, and you think, okay, it serves one purpose. However, there are different designs. For example, in shopping malls, stairs are designed in a way that, customers are forced to see as much as possible, shop windows. On the other hand, emergency stairs are completely different design, and they're, basically it's very hard to go up, but you can go very fast down. And you, for example, cannot pass next to each other. So let's go put it back to those spoons. So I realized, okay, so all those spoons were designed for a certain purpose. Actually, I chose those. So the first one you see is it's a spoon for medicine, because you can very, very well use enough medicine, and it's very good for dosing it. You have this spoon with a fork, and it's a spoon to eat noodles, soup. So it's both, you can eat noodles and you can eat soup at the same time with just one tool. You have this excellent spoon that is like a half of a spoon with a jar. So it's used to eat yogurt. So it's very, very useful, because it's very annoying when you buy a yogurt, you would like to eat it, and there are still things around on the corner. So this spoon was designed for that. There's a spoon that is standing, and my favorite, I think, is the one for eating Chinese dumplings, because you either can eat soup, at the same time you can use chopsticks to dip dumplings in the soy sauce. So this is an example of bad design. So bad design is, for example, when we are chasing something like creativity, it's especially in comics, and originality. So this is one of my favorite pages. I don't know, We Want Plates. It's about people having extremely bad experiences in restaurants, because they are served food, for example, on a shovel or in a shoe. So someone was very creative with that, but eventually the experience, the way you eat is terrible. So this is when the design is bad. So it goes to, so eventually when you think about it, there is actually, it's nothing new. I haven't discovered it. Actually, there was a guy who discovered it a long time ago. He was an architect. He was a guy who designed the first skyscrapers. And after he coined it, says like form follows function. So when you know what you would like to do, then you actually can design how the object looks like. And in this case, the game works. So it influenced industrial design, cinema, for example, Star Wars, engineering, and video games. Nintendo is using a lot of it. So this is basically design's first commandment. So we need to understand the function before we start designing. We can design the form, and the form communicates the function. So this is fundamental thing. So the function of video games, very, very, very easy. Deliver experiences and emotions in an interactive way. However, this picture is actually really bad, because this is what we don't want to do. We don't want to force people to experience things. We would like to manipulate them to do that. So how we do that? So basically, we can manipulate people by giving them rewards, because they build engagement, and eventually they engage in activities we would like them to experience. So there are two types of motivation. Probably you've seen this before. So we have intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. Everyone will tell you that the first one is good, that the second one is bad. However, extrinsic motivations are super, super easy to use. And to be honest, we shouldn't, like it's not something we should forget totally, because lots of games use that. And they're very easy, they work instantly. There are some kind of like games fuel. Games wouldn't exist without those rewards. On the other hand, we have to be very, very careful, because they don't work for a long time. And if they're used together with intrinsic motivation, they can actually ruin the second one. So there was actually an experiment how those extrinsic rewards work, and they were giving like there was a very simple game that you had to stop your watch at certain, like I think at 12 or something like that. It was like a stop one, and they were rewarding people. Like there was two groups. The control group was giving nothing, so they were just doing it, and it was okay, fine, you did it well. And the second group, they were given, I don't remember, like $1 for if they managed to stop the watch in a certain way. And in the first series, they realized, and actually they measured it in a very, very scientific way, because they plugged some kind of electrodes on their brain, and they were just checking how it lights up. So they were saying, okay, if you give money, the people were absolutely more engaged and happy. The thing is that after the next day, they took the same groups and they repeated everything, and it turned out that the rewarded group motivation was absolutely very low. However, the control group didn't change that much. So this is about ruining people motivation with rewards. You have to be very, very careful about it. So that's why we have to focus on those intrinsic rewards. The thing is, it's difficult to use. It's very hard to control, and this is why we're talking about it, and we'll talk about it later, especially when we start talking about manipulation. The thing is, they actually bring long-term results, and they're super rewarding as well. So I will go back to something in like in the 80s. Psychologists started to think about what actually motivates people, and they came with this self-determination theory, and they tried to understand what actually brings meaningful rewards for a human being in general in life, and what rewarding experience build a value and sustain the engagement. So it was created by those, there were lots of researchers actually working on that. However, those two guys were, let's say, like one of that started everything, and they were one of the most important, like Edward Decky, I think, or I don't know really how to pronounce, and Richard Ryan. So in 70s, they were interested in like difference between intrinsic and extrinsic rewards and motivation. So they actually created a theory around 80s. And at the beginning, like in psychology, you need a lot of time to actually prove it's working. You need lots of experiments and so on and so on. So in 2000, the theory started to be used actually for many, many, many other things, including video games. Right now, it's considered to be probably like the dominant psychological theory, what motivates people. So what they did is like they actually came down to like 3 very basic needs. They call it basic needs, and those are competence, relatedness, and autonomy. So competence is feeling as experiencing mastery and control of outcome. Relatedness is interaction, connection to other beings, especially humans, and experience of caring. And the last one is autonomy. And to be honest, I copied the whole thing because it's very, very tricky one. It's not freedom. It's something like feeling of freedom, but not really a freedom. So as I said, competence. It's a need of empowerment, growth, mastery. It's like gaining skill in playing, it's getting power, it's getting efficiency. And to be honest, this is one of the things that are extremely executed in games. This is something that games do probably the best. So first, there is a skill improvement. It's something, this is why people play this game, because otherwise, like everything else, it's around it. The core experience of this game is feeling that your skills are improving. There's not like deep story and so on and so on. So basically, this is a core experience of this game. However, there are also other games doing it extremely well, like all the MMOs. feeling that you have more power, that you're more powerful, that you gain a level, new abilities that allow you to explore the world, to go to a new area in the world. This is very, very, it's something that you feel in those games, so it's very important. It's not only about MMOs, but most of the games right now, they give you some kind of rewards like this, so feeling of empowerment and feeling that it's not only your skills, but also your avatar in the game is getting more powerful. Probably the best way of using it in games, this kind of rewards, if those rewards allow you to get other intrinsic rewards. So, if, for example, in this case, like, I don't know, probably you've played both Soul River and Zelda, you get tools that give you more options to actually enforce your autonomy in the game. So this is when all those needs, they, you know, are connected. If fulfilling one of those needs also fulfills another, fuel as another, is probably the best situation, and this is the one you have here. Second thing is this, it's called relatedness and sharing experience of growth. So it's connecting with others, supporting a cooperation, synergy with autonomy and competence. So again, here probably the best way, and that's why those games are so popular, are all multiplayer games, especially cooperation game, but as well PvP, to be honest, as well, because it doesn't have to be always like, okay, you're, you know, cooperating together, as well, like being in some kind of you know, like being challenged by others, winning that, overcoming others in a proper way also builds this, also fulfills those needs. Here, the core game design element of all MMORPGs, the classes, and then like specialization, tank, healer, DPS, gives you immediately a fulfillment of, you know, being needed. You know, the party without the healer is not able to progress, the party without tank is not able to progress, and so on and so on. And of course, Left 4 Dead, it was also very rewarding when you see that your friends, they're, you know, down, and you can go there and you can help them, and you together overcome zombies. So very, very strong. This need is probably the best realized in multiplayer. However, single-player games do it as well, very well, especially through storytelling. So, The Last of Us, actually the main motivation of this game is relationship with your adopted daughter. And for example, in Mass Effect, all the relationships on board of Normandy, they're also the main motivation of this game, because you actually do care about all those characters, and it is something that builds the motivation of the player in this game mostly. It's not about saving the world, it's about caring about those characters. And now we get to the most difficult one, autonomy. So it's a need to experience free will, which, as I said, is very tricky, because it doesn't mean it's freedom. It means that you have to feel that you have meaningful choices, and results of the choices are somehow important. So this is also very important in games. And every time player feels that he is forced to do something that is probably not even against him, but the moment he feels that he is forced to do something, this need is automatically, like, you know, violated. So the thing here is we would like to believe and accept that what we do in the game. So, for example, open world games, even if they don't give you full freedom in the world, they do it very well, because they offer you open world with lots of things, and you get like a, you know, it's like a plate in an open buffet saying, okay, you can go there, kill animals. You know, in The Witcher you have like lots of, you know, treasure hunts. You see it immediately. It's like, okay, whatever you would like to do, here it is in open world. So it works extremely well in open world games, especially when you see all the potentials that the world gives you. And however, as well, like what gives you a feeling of autonomy are dialogue choices. And here is a tricky part, because it's also very easy to break autonomy in dialogue choices. At the moment, when there is a moment that you, for example, feel that you don't have all the range of choices. So you believe that, okay, in this situation, they're forcing me to make, okay, choice A, B, C, but however, I think D should be the most natural for me. Then this is the moment when we break the feeling of autonomy. And so this is very tricky. On the other hand, it's also very rewarding, because we feel control of the story, And usually, if it's built well, like for example in some of those games that I show, but in The Witcher definitely as well, you feel that the choice changes the game. So there is an very important outcome of your choice. Here we start talking about, let's say, like some of the tricks. I will go back later and explain in details. However, this explains autonomy a little bit better, because it's not always having a choice. As I said, it's only feeling to have a choice. So I don't know if you played Fallout 3. It has extremely long and, to be honest, extremely linear tutorial. So you start as a baby, and then you progress, and so on and so on. And you're always, through the whole tutorial, you're locked in a very narrow and very claustrophobic underground vault. And it was a problem for players, because they got like, actually they were buying a game with open world, and then for half an hour they're forced to run between 3 rooms, and then they look the same. So and then they introduced, I don't remember if you remember this GOAT test. Anyone remembers, or do you remember the test? Who remembers the test on the one? Okay, so you remember. So in this test there was like a set of actually pretty ridiculous questions, like what would you do if you meet a UFO in the wilderness, and so on. So most of those questions were in theory to test your psychological profile. However, it was a projection of freedom. So most people at this moment, they had this kind of, okay, maybe I am in the vault. However, they're asking me questions about things that probably I will experience in the game later. And when they were testing walkthrough in this part, they realized that your motivation was jumping up like crazy after this test. And the only explanation was like this projection of freedom. So once you were out in the world, to be honest, they didn't care if actually were able to find those things. It was just people were, in this moment feeling, okay, there is something more, and I will get the freedom later. Here is a very interesting thing as well about autonomy. So probably, I don't know if you noticed, you remember this game for sure. What was introduced in Gears of War was this active reload. So most shooter games, they actually frustrate people when you reload. And it's a part of the game balance, so you are not able to actually remove it totally, because it's a part of the whole rhythm and the balance of weapons and so on. However, the moment when you're waiting for reload is the moment that you actually feel that you are robbed of autonomy, because you cannot do anything. You're occupied with reloading animation. And what they did is they gave actually some action to the reading time. And already feeling, okay, I can wait. However, as well, I can click something. And the reward of faster reload and so on, of course, it was giving some gameplay advantage. However, the most important was that during the time, they were able to do something meaningful. They were not robbed completely of freedom. They could do something. They didn't have to, but they could. And it was really, the feeling of that was a significant improvement of the experience of shooting. So, as I said, autonomy is not freedom. This is an extremely cool picture that I found. Like, this is actually what we want. We want player to feel that he's in control of his actions. However, he is still on our leash. So, player does what he wants. However, he has to want what we designers want. And this is probably where we have to think about autonomy comes from manipulation. So it's impossible to give a full freedom in games, at least right now. Maybe at some point when we have AIs generating procedurally games and so on, we will be able to give more freedom. Eventually fulfilling maybe totally autonomy of players. However, right now games are mostly smoke and mirrors, so we have to think about tricks. Okay, so come to the dark side and start thinking about what kind of tricks we can use. So first, the most important thing is narrative is a manipulation. The role of narrative in games is to create a context in which we start identifying, we as a player, start identifying our intrinsic goals. For example, it can be curiosity, emotional attachment, and so on, with actual game objectives. this is what makes me involved and engaged in a game. If I tell you, okay, kill this guy, without any reason, I am not engaged. However, if I create a context in which, for example, this guy killed someone I cared before, and of course I had to create as well context for this emotion before, then actually I will do it because this is what makes sense, what is also coming from my internal, like this is my emotion. I would like to do that. So I will go through very fast through several. Those are like basic manipulation techniques. So if anyone here was studying economy or something, probably you've seen some of those. And to be honest, they're pretty often used in games as well. So foot in the door. So how it works? So basically, we all human beings, we would like to act consistently, which means if I make an action, I would like to carry on with similar actions, not change my course. Secondly, it's easier to agree on very modest requests, and because then I would like to act very consistently, I can agree on higher and higher and higher requests in this way. So the classic experiment was like the researchers, they called several women in America, asking them if they can make a list of all the like household products they use, so like a washing powder or something like that. And the next day, they called again, and this time they said like, okay, we would like to continue the research, and we'll send like 5 guys to your home who will check everything in your house and list all the things you have in your house, because we would like to make sure that we don't have any mistake. And then they compared results of the second test between the group that already was asked in the first test with someone that was just asked without the first test. And it was twice more likely. People, after agreeing to the first request, they were twice more likely to agree for the second one. In practice, it's used by all the kind of salesman techniques and so on. So it's actually overused by salesman techniques. Example in games, I think this is the glorious one. This is actually the game that is absolutely built around this one manipulation technique. It starts with a tutorial in which you're asked, like, would you kindly, I think it was a letter with something. So you do something that first, you're at this moment you're really curious what's in the world. The request is super modest. It's just to pick up a letter, and actually as well I think you get some reward because you learn more. You find a gun or something. It was a long time ago. I am old and I don't remember exactly. However, then it goes step by step and escalates, and eventually you're asked to murder someone. And again, it's a game in which you don't really have a choice, so you eventually have to do it. However, after all those, step-by-step questions, it's no longer player at the moment when he has to kill someone. He is already okay. It's just another step. So his autonomy is not violated in the way that it would be if he was just asked from the very, very beginning. So if in the beginning of the game someone says, okay, kill this guy, and actually looks innocent, the guy looks innocent, we say like, what the fuck, I don't want to do that. However, with this narrative, I don't know, have you played the game? Or I spoiled it already to most of the people in the room? No, okay, I hope so, because I have 3 more spoilers, and I don't want to tell you what kind of games are there, so you have to risk. So, completely another approach is door in the face. And it's based on sense of guilt. So the previous one was based on sense of making consistent choices. This one is a completely different one. So first, we make a request that is absolutely impossible to fulfill in most cases. We reject it. Our test subject rejects them, and then we follow with request that is way more modest. And result is, for example, the test was like they asked people if they would like to spend some time with juvenile criminals for I don't remember 2 hours a week or something like that for 2 years, and they said no way. I mean I'm not agreeing on something that I will for 2 years spend that much time with those people. However, right after that they ask if they just can take them to the zoo, and then they realize that again, based on control group and the group that has the first request, the chance for people taking actually those criminals, like juvenile criminals to the zoo was tripled. It was extremely efficient way of actually manipulating people into doing something that most people would reject. And I will give you a practice how it's used, and it's overused by waiters all around the world. When you finish your meal, the first thing they ask is, would you like to have a dessert? And in most cases, people say no because they are full, and then they immediately follow maybe coffee or tea. And it's triple time. So it's like 3 times more people order coffee and tea just because they rejected dessert. And example in games, to be honest, I had a problem picking one because it's almost overused in games. This one is actually something I was pretty attached because I actually failed it. In Dragon Age Origins, there is a moment when you have this possessed child by demons, and by the law you have to actually execute her, like to take him under, like take him somewhere so he will be tortured and so on and so on. So the game gives you a choice to kill him. However, at the same time, gives you some other choices. And to be honest, they are not very easy to do because you need some sacrifice, you need use some resource that is pretty rare, and you actually would like to probably do something else with it. However, you do it because the request to kill a child is for most of us, for normal human beings, something that you reject automatically. It's so extreme. Even if the child was possessed, still, it's a child. So we prefer to search for other alternatives for that. And if you think about it as well, there are so many things that work also on a very low level. Like you, for example, propose something for, I don't know, 100 gold, and then you say, okay, but maybe you can do something else for 10 gold or something. And most people would choose the second one, even if originally it would be something like very, it would be already for them pretty expensive. Low ball. This is actually lying. This is actually very low. So it's about making attractive initial requests, getting agreement, and then actually telling you there are some details that we haven't mentioned the first time. And in most cases, people don't withdraw from this kind of deal. Experiment. So yeah, I really related to this one. So they asked students if they can show up to some special event at 7 a.m. Only 25% of people actually agreed on that. And there was another group in which they just asked if they can meet tomorrow, and they didn't tell them the hour. And 50% of students agreed that, of course, they can be at the meeting tomorrow. Then they revealed actually at 7 a.m., and almost all the students from both groups arrived, which makes it twice more effective than the first one. So 50% from the group that had no idea it's 7 a.m. when they agreed for that, and only 25% from the group that they knew it's 7 a.m. So people, it's kind of like the first one. It's consistent, but as well like withdrawing from something. It also makes you feel that you lost, because you already lost your time. You already agreed, you already talked with someone, and if you go back, okay, I don't want, you feel that you already lost something. So it's also an exploit of human psychology. And common practice is like buying car. You always get, okay, this car is very cheap, but if you would like to have heated, seats or extra mirror or something like that, and eventually it can be like almost 20% more expensive. Best example in games. This is the game that actually used this technique almost as a main storytelling device. So in this game, you never agreed. Am I again spoiling something? So in this game, you never agreed to be a bastard. You never agreed in the beginning that you're going to kill civilians. However, you constantly start doing it because the designers never tell you what are you, they tell you, okay, this is a mission, you're supposed to do something, and then you realize what you're doing, but you keep doing it. It's something when they don't tell you from up front that you're going to do something like this kind of atrocities. Okay, so fear and then relief. This is typical bad cop, good cop technique, and it's also very efficient. So create fear, show a way to relieve the fear, and close the deal. To be honest, it was proved that it works even if the relief is not linked with the fear. It was very funny example, because actually all the researchers they relate to a research that was done in Opole in Poland. So they were sitting. There was like a street, and there was like red light constantly, and people were crossing the street on the red light. And right after they crossed on the red light, they were coming to them and asking them if they can fill some kind of survey. But it was completely not related. The survey was like, I don't know, about vacuum cleaners or whatever. And there were two groups. Control group that they just crossed, like jaywalkers, they crossed the street and they were asked to do the survey. And there was another group, there was a police guy who was just whistling. So when they crossed the street, someone whistled, and right after that they were giving them survey. And people were like twice or like almost twice more willing to actually do the survey, because they were under the stress and kind of fear that they can be caught and get a fine. They were like, so, you know, like it was something else. It was natural reaction of our psychology to get relief, and in this case it was a survey. And the practice is everything that is to do with, for example, again, it's a sales technique that is used by, for example, all the insurance companies to make you be afraid of it. And this is the best example I found in games. Again, this is not a spoiler because it happens in the very beginning of the game, but you start this game and the first thing you feel is fear. And then you do a lot of things that you wouldn't do normally, I mean, so willingly. And here you hide the body, you try to clean yourself, you try to clean all the clues that lead that maybe you have, actually you kill the guy. However, in this case, autonomy is reinforced. So here, the state of fear is used to actually build a very strong motivation in the very beginning, and autonomy of actions. Nobody feels, it's just in one room, nobody feels in this situation that they would like to do something else. There are lots of other exploits. Okay, I think I am actually in time, almost. So what you can try to do, you can try to check online. There is lots of things hidden in cognitive biases. There is an anchoring effect. There is like emotional blind spots. There is lots of things like emotional perception, behavior economy, synthetic happiness, all the things that, for example, people don't think rationally, especially about random events. Yes, we feel that there is connection between random events, even if there is none. So this is something that every other industry as well tries to use. We have just to be very, 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 very careful, because we are working in entertainment industry and it is a fantasy and things work differently. So for example, in the real life, if you have the second, you know, the young guy ask, you know, someone tells you, this is your doctor, you would say like, oh, no, this guy definitely is not skilled. It's a cognitive bias. You have no idea if this guy is skilled or not. However, you see a kid and your brain is making a shortcut saying, no, it can be possible that this guy is skilled. Definitely I would like this experienced older guy. However, in games and video, I mean like in stories, when you see something like this, you immediately think, yeah, definitely the younger guy has to be a prodigy child. This is the story about, yes? So it doesn't work always, so we have to be very careful, because people are aware that this is a game. So maybe as a summary, those methods were proven to be successful in every field. There is a theory behind it. People were working on those methods for, like, you know, as I said, 30 or 40 years almost. Designers actually use them. We use them intuitively. Most of them are used in most games. As I said, I try to tell you that as long as it's used proper way, so it's good design and the purpose is right, it's not evil, they're used for goodness. They're on the dark side, because we are trying to manipulate people. So we have to use them very, very carefully. It's not something you do without thinking what can be actually the result. And we should also think about mastering this power, because at the end it allows us to deliver better experience to our players. Thank you.
Okay, we have some time, so who has the first question? Raise your hand. Or comment. Okay, we have one.
Don't you think that all game design is manipulation?
Yes, as I said, like design by itself.
Yeah.
I will give you an example. So
there is no light side of game design.
No, there is no light side. I mean, as I said, we think there is a light side. It wasn't the first thing. We think there is a light side. We would like to think about it.
Okay, so who's next? We've got to conclusion that there is no light side. So now, what's next?
Thank you for a speech. I think it's one of the best game design speeches I ever heard. I wanted to ask you, you was talking only about the narrative stuff that is catching people, but do you think that all the mechanics also have the bad side? So you just do something maybe uncomfortable for people to get out of this?
I strongly believe it's possible. However, it was easier for me to explain those with narrative. So this is probably, and as well, narrative is something that is extremely flexible. Because to be honest, we can tell any story we want, if we want what's the desired result. Gameplay, let's say, systems can work as well as a tool of manipulation. However, in most cases, I mean, like, of course, I will give an example of bad design, okay? Because it's easier to show it like on the negative side. So, for example, I played Divinity Original Sin or something like that. Yes, it's super cool game. It has pretty nice story. It's kind of generic fantasy. However, still it's a very nice game. The problem is I have some kind of compulsory disorder. So when I came to the first chest and I realized that there is a random loot and I can save and load, I think opening the first chest took me 1 hour. And then I get to the graveyard, and there was like, I think, 40 graves, and every grave was a chest. And I think I spent 3 days, and I uninstalled the game. So the game was using an exploit in my psychology, which is like I wanted the best results, and the experience at the end was, I don't think the designers were thinking, okay, we'll make a game about opening chests on the graveyard. We will create, I don't know, like 1 hour of the content. However, most people will spend 300 hours just opening chests in one graveyard. So this is an example when bad game design, and as I said, like from some reason you can think, okay, it's cool, yeah, random rewards, that's awesome. Yes, they open the chest and bam, you can get something crappy. However, you can get an epic item. They didn't think that in this case you can save the game, load it, open again. And they created a game system that was forcing me to do that over and over and over again. And I was really, really thrilled at the first time because I was getting a very strong extrinsic rewards. But then it went down, yes? And I completely lost my intrinsic, motivation to actually play the game. They destroyed completely my interest in the game with this kind of system. So as you see, it can be very bad design that ruins it. And the thing is, when the design is very good, you never notice that. They manipulate you in a way that it's natural. This is what I would like to do, yes? This is perfect, yes? This is the perfect design when you don't feel it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm here. I'm really impressed with your speech. I would like to ask you about planning. So do you plan, for example, that you will use this door in the face 3 times for 3 hours of gameplay?
Wow, I never thought about it. This is a producer question, yes? So I think definitely there is a rule of diminishing returns, which means if you start using those things too often, people start, you start getting less on the results. So probably you should plan it, yes, in a way that you have some game, and to at least plan to not use them too often, too close. Yeah, probably it's a good idea.
Okay, I have a question. You filled this speech with plenty of stuff, interesting things, that I think that I would love to read more about or learn more. Is there anything you would recommend to younger developers, like a book or a YouTube channel or whatever, blog?
Okay, what I can tell you is I've read a lot of design books, like about game design, and most of them, they really focus on just technical stuff, like very, very like some kind of rules. And it's very artificial, it's just on the surface. And I really had long time in my career to find some sources that can understand what actual design is. And the thing is, what I showed you is like when I started reading architecture books. So when you actually would like to understand how design works, you have to go for books about architecture, because architecture exists for thousands of years, and we already had time to understand how it influences people. So the example with stairs and so on, there's way more tricks in architecture, and they're really good examples. So this is where I get this understanding what I'm doing as a designer. And I think as well, like industrial design can help a lot, but as I said, this is probably, as well in architecture, you have this kind of masters. I don't want to offend anyone in game industry, but I don't think we are mature enough to have this kind of masters that actually thinking about what we are doing in terms of design. Like that, there is any kind of philosophy behind it. It's just tricks, and we are very focused on achieving results instead of thinking what actually it means.
And data are not driving your game design, like data from previous productions, stuff like that? What people were doing in the game, how many hours?
I think all the data is you have to understand what they mean, yes? And of course, we learn more and more. I see a huge difference between game design and game developed like 10 years ago, 15 years ago than right now. But still, as I said, we probably need a few generations before we get to this point when we start having more like, you know, as I said, deeper understanding what we are doing. Anyway, I hope it's not too late. No?
Yeah, like we have the time for last question to Michał. Okay, here it is.
Hello, isn't there a danger that a player might just know that he's over-manipulated? Too much of stuff like this?
Okay, so then it comes to actually all the trainings, because actually people receive trainings to know when they are manipulated. The thing is, it doesn't mean that it stops working. We are hardwired to work in a certain way. And even with the training, you can understand what's happening, but it doesn't change your, you know, like reaction at first.
Okay, there's a question more.
Yeah, it's like in relation to the last question, is it sometimes desired that the player actually knows that he is manipulated? In a bit like in a way, for example, Breaking Bad worked. It was like the small steps, and the watcher was actually supposed to notice that.
Sure. As I said, like, it's not about player not noticing he is manipulated. As I said, it works anyway. Does he know it or not, it still works. The thing is that probably players don't want to fight against the game. After all, they bought the game, they would like to experience something. The problem is when players would like to enjoy the game, but it's so clumsy that we cannot induce this motivation in him. So this is the problem. If he understands what we are doing, it's fine. I mean, he's probably happy with that anyway.
Okay, Michał, I have to bring you closer here to the stage with last question from me. This is, I saw that the tweets about your presentation are today most liked tweets from Digital Dragons, so I assume that you liked the presentation. The last question is, what is your advice for younger developers who are trying to do their indie productions? What genre they should follow, or should they go VR, mobile? Is there any advice you could give them, or?
I can't tell which direction we should go, because as I said, we make games because we love to create something that gives fun and those experiences. So think about experiences you would like to do before designing. This is my main, like, if there is any outcome from this presentation, it's okay, I hope you understand what we are doing, but the most important thing is I've seen lots of designers designing cool things, and they think this is cool just because it's cool, and then they never think about how actually this design manipulates people into doing something. As I said, the chest design from Divinity Original Sin. This is an example of something that looks cool, however, ends up with disaster. So as a designer, as a developer, always think what you would like to achieve and actually what's the player experience. Because, for example, in Fallout, the combat design sounds really cool. You can pause the combat, you can have like a mixture of real time, and at the same time you can have something turn-based, and the design sounds pretty sound. However, at the end, every time I play Fallout, I am just running in circles, waiting for enemies to chase me. When I get my action points back, and then I return, I stop the time and fire, and then start running around. And I think nobody in Bethesda said like, okay, we're going to make a game that looks like Benny Hill. Definitely not. So think about the experience.
Okay, I wonder what about combat methods will tell us our next presenter from Superhot. But right now, I would like to ask you to join me giving thanks to Michał for this great talk.